Here we go. All right, welcome back to another episode of our podcast, which is called
Ion Physiology.
Yay, Ion Physiology. They didn't know I was going to call on them for that. So Ion Physiology. Once again, this is a podcast that we, myself, and the GTAs are making in conjunction with our online physiology program. That's our online Masters in Physiology. So we are going to be giving announcements with this podcast, maybe do some interviews, some fun stuff, and hopefully keep you guys entertained as well. So a couple of announcements before we begin with the content area. We are going to be having a mock exam here pretty soon. We're going to send out some details on what that looks like, but essentially you're going to be downloading the ExamSoft software and then making sure it all works on your computers, whether you're Mac or whether you're PC. And so hopefully we don't have any Linux people out there because you're going to have to buy a computer. Sorry about that, but we need to be on Mac or PC, and I think that it's also Mac or Windows. Sure, I guess I'm saying operating systems, right? We need to make sure that we are. What was the other? There was another aspect of that, Haley, that he said that we. Oh yes, it was Google Chrome or Firefox. I think were the two browsers that you all can use. So just be checking your inbox for that. Sometimes we do have some issues, but we want to work through them before we get to the big exam. That way you're not stressed about connectivity issues. You're just normally stressed about the exam itself. And that's the only stress we want. Hopefully minimize that, bring it down to here. Feel like we need to be more expressive with our hands. We're trying this all together. In one room instead of multiple things. So I feel like you need to look back, but I can see Dom just by looking forward. Hi, Dom. Okay, so we have the mock exam coming up, number one. Number two is this is the second week second week of the course. And so make sure that you are budgeting enough time to put for understanding these concepts. Remember, physiology is not about memorization. Don't try to memorize these concepts. There's just too much information, and honestly, that's not going to prepare you well for your professional program. You need to understanding. Hey, I don't know if you guys have heard, there's a great quote by Albert Einstein, and it goes something like this: any fool can know, the point is to understand. The point is to understand. So gain that understanding. That's going to take time. So if you're too busy on the weekdays, you thought you could do it, but then you end up being too busy, you can't do it. Please make sure to budget time on the weekends, or a little bit of time per day studying physiology will go a long way, right? Do not get behind. This is one of those courses and areas of study where it's cumulative. The areas that you are learning now, you're going to build upon later. So it's really imperative that you do not get behind. TLDR with that whole spiel, if you tuned out, don't get behind, and make sure you are spending enough time to learn these concepts, not just memorize them, okay? The exam, a little bit about the exam. We've said there's going to be a mock exam. It will be proctored. We are using different tools to ensure exam integrity. One of those tools involves you turning your camera on the entire time, and it's going to look at eye tracking. It's going to look at all these other criteria to ensure exam integrity. We also have you lift up your camera wherever it is, and you rotate it in a 360-degree manner all around your room, right? So that's just giving you guys a heads up so that nobody's freaked out, and you make your bed before exam day, right? We're going to make that's standard operating procedure. It's going to look around. You're going to have to show your desk, show your ceiling, everywhere else with your camera, and then you're going to put your computer back down and take the exam, okay? So we do have aspects that are a little bit more detailed than when we are just having you guys go through the modules. So please make sure to be on the lookout for that email as we will hopefully send it out this week. The mock exam will open up for the online program this Friday, and it's going to last till next Tuesday, okay? Any other news or announcements that we have? GTAs, any other news or announcements? Anything we want to say? I think there's coming a survey, right? Hunter, is that right?
Yeah, it should be imminently.
Okay, eminently, I love that.
Pending IRB.
There we go, pending IRB approval. That's Institutional Review Board approval or exemption. We will be sending out a survey. This survey is really important to take. A lot of students just let it kind of go, or they don't check the inbox, or they're like, hey, there's a survey, it's going to take 5 minutes. I don't want to do it. I'd rather scroll on TikTok, right? And so what do? They scroll on TikTok. Now, that's not you. I know that's not you. I'm excited that's not you. Thank you for that not being you. Please make sure to go ahead and take that survey. The feedback is incredibly helpful for us to continually improve the program, okay? So that survey's coming out, and then I think, actually, Amy over here. Okay, Amy, go ahead and talk about what social media. Do we have a social media page?
Yes, we do. So we're on TikTok as Ion Physiology, and we'll be posting content weekly on there, so you should follow us. And then also, I wanted to say that the Unit 1 and Unit 2 microvid assignments are also on Blackboard now, and they're in the discussions tab.
Fantastic. So make sure that you reach out there. Haley wants to give you a high five. Good job, Haley.
Are we having a town hall on Saturday?
We are probably going to have a town hall this Saturday. Once again, we're going to send out an email today with that confirmation, but it will be Saturday. When we say town hall, it's just a Q&A. It's just a time to, if you have any questions, if you're not understanding the mechanics, if you want to gripe about something, complain about something, you can come and do that as well. But it's just an opportunity for you all to gather around, and all of us see each other at least at the same time. No yawning, Caleb. I saw you try to hide that one. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's so funny. You're over here on the left, but you're right actually over here. You're on the left side of the screen. That is right. So, but anyway, it's going to be a great time, and we're excited to have you. Even if you want to show up for 5 minutes and drink your coffee and be like, "Hey, cheers!" Right? It's going to be a great time for that. So. That will be most likely Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. So just make sure that you are checking your email. One other thing that I wanted to go over before we dive into the content is your assigned GTA should have already reached out to you proactively and tried to just communicate, hey, introduce themselves. And also, they're going to be setting up a time if they've not done it already. That email is pending. They're going to set up a time to where you guys can, as a smaller group, get together. The whole thought behind that is that sometimes it's a lot easier to organize smaller groups than larger groups and have everybody participate. So if you could respond to their email with the available times or times that don't work or chunks of time. For instance, if you are really busy during the week, right? You've got 5 kids and you're bald like me, and you're like, hey, I just have no time in the evenings. Well, that's great. That's okay. Just make sure you respond back to them and let them know that weekends are best for you. And if Saturday mornings work great at 6 a.m., then by golly, we'll brew some coffee at 6 a.m. and make sure that we're going to be able to meet you there. So we want to meet you where you're at, and that's one of the benefits of this program is that it works around your schedule. Okay? All right. We do have a brief word before we transition to our content of the week. We do have some sponsors, right? So we would like to give a shout out to Sodium Potassium Pump Energy Drink. Need a boost? Try Sodium Potassium Pump. 3 sodiums out, 2 potassiums in, and a whole lot of energy for your day. Keep your gradients sharp, your cells charged, and your action potentials firing. Yeah. Once again, Sodium Potassium Pump Energy Drink. Trademark. Watch out now. This episode is also brought to you by Myelin Wraps. Why walk when you can sprint? Myelin Wraps insulate your nerves for lightning fast conduction. Now in 3 flavors: saltatory salsa, node nacho, and my personal favorite, rapid fire ranch. Once again, that's Myelin Wraps.
I feel like I'm wearing a Myelin wrap.
There you go. And finally, this episode is sponsored by ATP Unlimited. Tired of being tired? Power your life with ATP Unlimited, the universal currency of energy. Spend it anywhere. Muscles, neurons, even that one mitochondrion you forgot about. That is ATP Unlimited.
Who can forget about the mitochondria?
We have so many sponsors here. We're in a
We
concrete
do.
room.
We do have a lot of sponsors, and we are in a concrete room.
The DB hold it together.
All right, here we go. Anything else before we move on to the next item for this podcast?
I don't think so. Just jumping into content.
Okay, all right, Caleb, take it away.
Yeah.
I think didn't we? Am I starting it off? Okay.
Oh wow, okay, I was being facetious, but go ahead. Yeah, Caleb.
okay.
Hey, you're in half frame. Come on, shoulder up. Don't
There
be
we go.
scared,
There
Caleb.
we
Don't
go.
be scared. There we go.
We just going over the content that you all have gone over, specifically in regards to membrane and like going into action potential. We kind of just have it written up to where briefly talk about all kinds of things because we recently actually we're in a course here as GTAs going over kind of the same stuff you just went over. We just got grilled on Wednesday over having in-depth knowledge of everything. We had to go up there and give little mini presentations, no prep time. We had to go in there just straight knowledge off
Man.
the top of the brain.
Off the dome.
Off the dome.
Off the dome.
And
That's what we say. That's the new
Off-
generation
off
lingo.
the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff and the dome.
That's right.
The shiny dome.
So, just going over action potential and membrane physiology, I mean, looking at what we talked about in regards to that, I have the list actually pulled up because Dom came in clutch and kind of just sent us what kind of topics we wanted to talk about with regards to it. The first thing we talked about was membrane properties. And so going over different ion channels and kind of what makes it up. So, you know, as we all know, as we all have learned about the membrane, we go over our phospholipid bilayer. Bilayer 2, like a bicycle, you know, 2. Phospholipid bilayer, and then kind of the components of that. Specifically what you all would have gone over, not going too crazy in depth on everything that can be in there, but you learned about cholesterol components, and then you learned about ion channels and those kinds of proteins that are within the phospholipid bilayer. So with regards to action potential and charge, we talked about ion channels. So we talked about the different kinds that there are, ligand gated, voltage gated. We talked about size and charge specific kind of channels.
What are voltage gated channels? Caleb, pray tell.
Oh, so glad you asked. Voltage gated channels, that's where the channels are going to open up based on changes to the actual charge of the membrane, the voltage as it shifts, you know, because we go over like resting membrane potential, reaching threshold, voltage gated channels, opening up whenever there's that different charge. So think about it like you're flipping the light switch. Oh, I'm getting in a guest
Sweet
speaker
nothings in
the
your
back.
sweet
Yeah,
nothings in
that's
his
right.
ear as he's talking. This is
Fast
great.
voltage gated sodium channels.
That's right,
That's
Dean.
one of the most
Hey,
important
thanks,
ones we
Dean.
talk
That
about.
was good. That was clutch.
Yeah,
That
it
was
came
clutch.
in.
That was off his dome too.
That was off the
Off the
dome.
cuff.
So that's the one that we always end up talking about, and what professors here, including Dr. Brainerd, will harp on you about are those
Fast voltage gated sodium channels. Very good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kicking off that action potential.
Right. It comes
that
right off the
hits
tongue
it.
every time. Right.
So yeah, that's one of the first important things we talked about and what you all learned about.
Wait. Did you say kicking off the action potential? Is that what you said? For what? What type of cell?
Well, we're talking about like just with cell membranes in regard to ion channels and like,
Okay.
huh?
More,
Get away, guest
more
speaker.
sweet nothings. With neuronal,
With
I think we said
neuronal cells,
neuronal,
that's
some
what he's
muscle
coming in.
cells too, muscle cells, depending
Yeah.
on what cell type, right? It's going to have those fast voltage-gated sodium channels, right? The cardiomyocytes, the non-nodal cardiomyocytes, they're going to have those as well. So, what is unique, pray tell, Hunter, about fast voltage-gated sodium channels? That make them fast. I think we discussed this yesterday. Didn't we say there's something unique about them?
Well, I mean, one thing that's pretty unique about them is they have an activation and an inactivation gate. So,
That's right.
you know, when we're getting to that threshold potential, that activation gate's going to snap open and let those
do it.
sodium ions flood in.
Yes, I love it. That was great. That was said with enthusiasm and excitement. Amy, no, we're not. Okay, we're not going there. Amy learned a little bit yesterday. She learned something new, right? As we say in Kentucky here, learned something good. Okay, all right, great. Yeah, thank you, Caleb. Channels, they're important, so don't forget them. Anybody else who wants to go next? Do we have content cards around? Or?
I will say the
We
next.
have some content cards. I believe the next section is resting membrane potential.
RMP.
It's equilibrium potential.
Equilibrium potential.
It all goes together.
Okay, all right. Well, who wants to take it away for the equilibrium potential?
I'll start us off.
I don't know. I just
What does that mean?
and
Nose
goes.
What is it?
I don't know what that means.
The last person to touch your nose has to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, okay.
Resting member and potential.
Oh my God. Okay. Resting what did you want to talk? What do you want me to talk about, Doctor? I'm sorry.
Just
Like,
resting membrane.
How is resting membrane potential
Yes.
resting?
Yes.
Well, it's kept by the different gradient of electrochemical charge. So basically, the difference in gradient between positive charges inside the cell and outside the cell, and also you have very important concept you have to remember is that the proteins that are inside the cell are stuck there. They are not going anywhere, and they're mostly negative charges, and they're like huge. So really, that plays a major role in keeping the inside of the cell negative. But also, the body wants it to be negative, so you know.
I don't know if I'd say the body wants it to be negative. That's more like anthropomorphizing something, right? It is what it is, right? So,
Yeah.
So what is the major determinant or determining factor that basically says, hey, resting membrane potential of a neuron is what? What's the actual voltage?
Negative 70.
Negative 70 millivolts. Thank you.
Sorry.
So what actually determines, like, why is it negative 70? Why is it around negative 70? I feel like I'm shaking the camera.
Like,
The potassium leak channels.
Boom! What about potassium leak channels? So we have them, right?
We do have those.
Are they always open?
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And what are they doing?
they're
Leaking
letting,
potassium.
They're leaking potassium. Thank goodness it's actually named after what it does, right? And this portion of the episode is brought to you by potassium leak channels. They're always leaking, and they're channels.
Don't use them to fix your gutters.
Don't use them to fix your gutters. I don't know. I don't think that works. Potassium leak channels, right? So these potassium channels, they are going to contribute or be one of the major factors that contribute to resting cell membrane potential because there's so many of them. I think you have around 4 to 5 times as many potassium channels as you do other types of ion channels, and so these leak channels, these potassium leak channels, allow, by and large, potassium to freely move back and forth depending on its, as we had mentioned, its electro and chemical gradient. So when we talk about an electro and chemical gradient, that balancing point, there's a phrase or like a piece of nomenclature that we refer to that as. What is it called? Equilibrium potential. So if that's a confusing concept, it really is just where the concentration gradient, right, which is, we also call that the chemical gradient, where that is balanced by the electrical gradient. They don't always go together, okay? So let's use sodium, for instance. At resting membrane potential, sodium is a positive ion. Sodium is much higher on the outside than it is on the inside of the cell. So sodium is a positive ion. The inside of the cell at resting membrane potential is negative, right? So it is, if you could want it to, right, it is going to be drawn in or have an attractive force inside the cell because it is at a much higher concentration outside the cell at resting membrane potential. The electrical gradient for sodium is also favoring its influx into the cell because sodium's a positive ion. It's moving from the there's a draw, an electrical gradient for it to move from the outside of the cell to the inside of the cell. Okay? So if we look at potassium, though, during resting membrane conditions, which is, let's say, negative 70 millivolts, which we've already established, it is a positive ion, right? So if it will want to do anything, right, it's attracted, opposites attract, right? So it's a positive ion inside the cell, but the inside of the cell is a negative charge, so it is actually, it wants to stay inside the cell if it could want to do anything, right? There's an attractive electrical force keeping it inside the cell. But it's at much higher concentration inside the cell at resting membrane potential than it is outside the cell. So the chemical or the concentration gradient favors its efflux or its movement out of the cell. So we have this chemical gradient at resting membrane potential, once again, this chemical and electrical gradient that are in opposition to one another. Thank you, Dom. Love the visual aid. They're in opposition to one another at resting membrane potential. So every ion is going to have what's called an equilibrium potential, and that equilibrium potential is where the electrical and the chemical gradient are balanced. And it just so happens that because we have so many potassium leak channels and potassium channels in and of itself, that the resting membrane potential is closest to potassium's equilibrium potential, because potassium is going to be able to move freely back and forth and play a large role in determining where that overall membrane potential would be. Some might even say, and you might even see this somewhere, that the cumulative total of all of the ionic equilibrium potentials come together to form a total membrane potential. Now, some ions, like potassium, are going to have a higher impact on where that membrane potential falls. Some are going to be in the middle, and some are going to have very, very little impact depending on their concentration and electrical gradients and their movement within the cell. Okay? All right. Go ahead. Anybody else? So what next? So we've talked about membrane potential. We've talked about ionic channels.
Yeah.
What else, Dom?
Next, I think we're going to jump into the action potential.
Oh, snap, crackle, and pop. We're going to be talking about the action potential. So who's taking it away with the action potential? All right, Nadeem, again, take it away with the action potential.
Well, the action potential happens when because just like Dr. B said, the potassium leak channels are always open, they're always leaking. So resting membrane potential is around like 70% for like.
Not percent.
Negative
Sorry, 70 millivolt.
Negative 70
Negative 70
millivolts. There we
millivolt for like let's say with a neuron. It's easier. And then so when the potassium starts leaking outside the cell, it's making. Potassium is a positive ion, so it's making the cell actually a little bit. How does that work?
Does potassium leak both ways?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
So
It
it's
can
making
go.
Okay, so it's making the cell actually more.
And is
positive.
potassium, well, at resting membrane potential, it's going to stay
It's
at
staying
that
negative.
membrane. It's going to stay at that membrane potential. Here's why. Because while you have potassium by and large leaking out of the cell, some of it can leak back in, but the concentration gradient is going to push it out, leaking out.
Yeah.
The electrical gradient is going to want to keep it from leaking out.
Yeah.
But what do we also have that we talked about yesterday that contributes about 5 to 15 millivolts to the membrane potential that helps maintain membrane potential? What pump on the cell surface do we have?
Sodium, potassium.
The sodium potassium ATPase pump. Which pumps what does it pump, Haley?
3 sodium out and 2 potassium in.
Very good. 3 sodium out and 2 potassium in. So potassium's constantly being pumped in unless that pump is inhibited or messed up by some sort of pharmacological means, such as digitalis or digoxin. It can also be called digitoxin, right? That can actually inhibit the sodium potassium ATPase pump. And that has other ramifications down the line. But getting back to what you had said with the action potential, resting membrane potential is part of a normal cell action potential, right? And it's going to be maintained at negative 70 for a neuron by and large. And once again, I say maintained by the sodium potassium ATPase pump. Now it's established, right? It is at that level because of the equilibrium potential of potassium. What is the equilibrium potential of potassium? Anybody?
Negative 85.
Yep.
Minus 85 or negative 85 millivolts. So it's, thank you for the label, Tom. I was like, labels. Okay, very good. So we have an action potential. So we have resting membrane potential, which is also called phase what in a, let's say, a neuronal cell action potential? What's it called? Phase?
4.
Anybody? 4, phase 4. Very good. And then after phase 4, we have phase
0.
0. What is 0 called?
Depolarization.
Depolarization. And in most cell types, that is we're going to see depolarization largely, by and large, due to what channel being open and what's controlling it?
Fast sodium channels.
Fast
Voltage
voltage-gated sodium channels. Very good. Fast voltage-gated sodium channels. So these channels are going to open up. What's going to happen, Hunter?
They're going to open up. That activation gate's open. It's letting that sodium in. It's
Letting it in. Down its what?
concentration gradient.
And
And it's
Electrical gradient.
electrical gradient. Thank you, Hunter. Very good. Yeah. So it's going to be moving into the cell, influx, down its electrical and its chemical gradient, and it's just going to flow in, right? What's going to happen to membrane potential as sodium floods into the cell? Right.
More positive?
That's right. It's going to be more positive. Why? Because we have a positive ion moving from extracellular space to the intracellular space, right? So it's going to be more positive. So we're going to see that membrane potential creep up, right? Actually, not creep up. It's going to shoot up pretty drastically. And then what happens? What happens next?
The inactivation gate starts closing around when the threshold, like the membrane potential becomes above zero.
Around 0 millivolts membrane potential, right? These fast voltage gated sodium channels are going to inactivate, right? That is, their inactivation gate will close, right? So this inactivation gate closes, and it will cause the sodium to be prohibited from entering the cell. So it will stop the sodium influx, right? We'll get a little bit of a peak here. If they stop at 0, this was a really good question yesterday. If it stops at 0, if it inactivates at 0, that is these fast voltage gated sodium channels, why do we still see an overshoot or a peak that actually rises up to maybe positive 20 or positive 30 millivolts?
Not all of them get inactivated at the same time.
Exactly. Some of
Vary.
them, that's right. There's a little bit of variability in there that's enough to kind of cause a little bit of an overshoot. Okay, so now we've essentially depolarized the cell, right? The inside at resting membrane potential of a cell was negative, and now it's positive, right, compared to the outside. So whenever you have resting membrane potential, whenever you have some sort of voltage, a membrane potential in a cell, remember the outside of the cell is going to be equal and opposite. So if the inside of the cell is negative 70 millivolts, the outside of the cell is positive 70 millivolts, right, in comparison. If the inside of the cell after depolarization, because these fast voltage gated sodium channels opened up due to voltage change, they sensed it from another cell, and then boom, sodium rushes in, and now we've got the cell depolarizing all the way up to, say, a positive 30 millivolts on the inside of the cell. That means the outside of the cell is what? What is it? Negative 30. Very good. Millivolts. Very good. Don't forget those. Don't forget those labels. So negative 30 millivolts. So just once again, a little caveat: the outside of the cell is always going to be equal and opposite. This is going to come in really handy when you're trying to understand cardiovascular physiology. When we look at an EKG, that is an electrocardiogram, we can't measure the inside of the cells of the heart. We actually have to. That is the membrane potential. We put the electrodes on the outside of the body, and they sense and measure the outside cell potential. Okay. Okay, so we have depolarization. Then what happens next? Repolarization, which is phase
Oh my god.
3.
3.
3. Phase 3.
They don't have one.
Very good. Phase 3 is called repolarization, right? So we went from phase 4, resting membrane potential, phase 0, and that is depolarization, and then phase 3 in repolarization. This is looking at a neuronal cell. Pray tell Hunter or Amy or Caleb or Nadim or Haley, what happened to phases 1 and 2? Where did they go? Did they disappear? Do we just skip over those numbers? What's happening?
For the neuronal cell, I think, like for the myocardial let's just focus on myocardial, which has a 1 and a 2 phase.
So the the cardiomyocytes, right, have a 1 and 2.
These has more to do with the calcium influx inside the cell. So they're not gone, they're just showing up in different cells.
Okay, so they're going to be more prominently seen or appear in other cells, such as non-nodal cardiomyocytes. You're going to see this phase number 1, which is called, come on y'all,
Initial
repolarization, very good. And then phase 2, which is called plateau phase, right? So neuronal cells, which is what we've been talking about mostly, and we're going to continue to use that example, they don't really have a phase 1 and a 2, at least not apparently. You can't really see it in the actual action potential. So it goes from 4 to 0 to 3, and then that's repolarization. So let's talk about what's happening in repolarization. What happens in repolarization? Somebody, what happens?
The voltage-gated potassium channels are now open.
What caused the voltage-gated potassium channels to open?
The positive resting membrane potential getting positive.
So a depolarization,
Yeah,
essentially, right? So there's somewhere in that line, and there are different types of isoforms of these voltage-gated potassium channels, but in that depolarization phase, you have the triggering of those voltage-gated potassium channels, triggering them to open. And so now these voltage-gated potassium channels open up, and then what happens? Where is potassium going? So first of all, where is it higher?
It's higher inside.
It's higher inside the cell. So it's higher inside the cell, right? So the concentration gradient is making it move out. But we said at resting membrane potential at negative 70 millivolts, even though the concentration gradient was promoting efflux, the electrical gradient was promoting influx. Is that the same scenario here?
No, so
No.
since resting membrane potential is now positive, now both of them are promoting
Now,
efflux.
very good, Dom. So now we've got because we've depolarized the cell, so the inside of the cell is no longer negative, but it's now a positive 30. Potassium's positive, right? And that means the outside of the cell is a negative 30, comparatively speaking. So we have an efflux with the concentration and the electrical gradient for potassium to move out of the cell. That is an efflux promoting that. And so potassium rapidly moves out of the cell during repolarization. If we have a positive ion inside the cell moving to the outside of the cell, so it's losing positive ions, what happens to the inside of the cell? It becomes more negative, which is exactly what we see with the action potential when we have repolarization. Okay, so now these voltage-gated potassium channels, they don't have these inactivation gates. Those are something that is unique to the fast voltage-gated sodium channels. So they're going to close on what basis? Did you guys go into that in physiology, on what basis that they are open and close? So the trigger for them to open is voltage, right?
Voltage.
So they don't close at another voltage. It's just timing, right? So they're going to be open for a certain amount of time and then they close. And if the voltage is sustained, then they're going to stay open because the trigger for them to open is going to be open. You don't have to get into all of that. That's more biochemistry than you probably need at this level. But so now we've got membrane potential becoming more negative compared to the outside of the cell, right? And it's going to go back to resting membrane potential, and the entire scenario can start over again from the top, right? Start at the beginning. It's a very good place to start, right? Hashtag Sound of Music.
Also want to throw in there and talking about the potassium channels, that at the peak of potassium conductance, that's where we move from the absolute to the relative refractory period.
That is a great comment there, Hunter. Pray tell, what is refractory period?
So refractory period is just roughly when you can't start another action potential. So in the absolute refractory period, there is absolutely no way that we can start another one. And then in the relative refractory period, you technically can, but it's difficult. It's going to take a really strong signal to start
Yes.
that substroke again.
Very good. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up too. That is really important to note, and that has to do. Remember, you've got refractory period. You have an absolute where you absolutely cannot have another action potential, and then you have a relative refractory period, which is basically means you have to have a supra-stimulus, right? You have to have a supranormal stimulus, or a stimulus that's higher than normally would be required for there to be another action potential occur at that same time point. Very good. Okay. All right, Dom. What's next on the queue?
All right, last thing I've got up on the docket is action potential propagation and saltatory conduction.
All right, propagation. Who wants to take that fun topic?
I think Caleb talked about it.
Caleb!
As
I
an
did talk
expert.
about it yesterday.
Well, I did talk about it yesterday, but I wanted to give people who haven't spoken a chance to speak.
Does Haley want to take this one?
Well,
Haley does not want to take this
Or
one.
Haley or Amy, like.
Amy
does not want to take this one.
Caleb, I think you've been
I'll talk-
volunteered
I'll
as
talk
tribute.
about it. I'll talk
All
about
right,
it.
you might have to move over here so people
So,
can see you.
with action potential, what we talked about is it's kind of like you're following the charge down the actual axon of the neuron. You're following this action potential as it's being drawn down, because it's not like it's just being pushed by some force. It's being drawn. So something that you'll see in your modules or even in the recordings of the presentations, because you'll hear Dr. Falcone's recorded presentations, follow the positive. So you're following the actual charge being propagated down the axon. So essentially, as that resting membrane potential is going from the negative to positive from depolarization, that's flipping to a positive charge, and that positive charges getting drawn down the membrane to the other negative charges. So that's why we say follow the positive charge, because as the depolarization of action potential happens, it's just like a magnet being drawn.
So it's essentially a depolarization wave, right?
Yes.
If you've got a long tube right here, we're going to start over here on this side, right? We're going to go, let's go this way because it's opposite in the camera we see. So we're going to start over here, we're going to go this way. This portion of the axon, right? Let's call it the axon hillock, right? Right next to the body. That is going to depolarize, which means the inside of the cell is now positive, the outside is negative, right? And then you're going to follow the positive, right? This portion right next to it hasn't yet depolarized, so the inside is negative, the outside's positive. So you've got two portions of the axon where you've got it depolarized here, it's not depolarized here, and so it's going to be like a wave-like motion where you've got the depolarization wave moving segment by segment all along the axon body, I guess you could say, the portion of the axon, right, to the terminal bouton or the terminal axon.
Yes.
So do we need to talk about myelination versus non-myelination,
That's what we talk about when so saltatory conduction, like we learned yesterday, surprise.
Fun fact of the day.
Fun fact of the day. So
Right.
saltatory conduction, I got asked point blank up top, why is it called saltatory conduction?
Who would do such a thing?
And I was like a deer in
Was that me? Was that me?
I think it was.
It may have. It very well may have.
I
Caleb.
was like a deer in headlights, and I was like, I don't know why it's called saltatory conduction. I just know it's called saltatory conduction.
And who came up with the answer? Was that Nadeem? I think Nadeem came up with the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. he
Yeah,
did.
so like from Latin.
He was
like,
excited
salta-
about it.
salta- Well, didn't you say Latin?
It originates from Latin.
Latin. It's Latin root for what? Somebody say the word.
To jump.
Saltus.
To jump. Saltar. Saltus.
Yeah.
Saltar. Salt. Yep. Spanish is saltar, which is derived from the Latin, which is
Saltus.
saltus, right?
Mhm.
So don't get salty if you don't remember that.
But
Back to you,
I had to
Caleb.
recollect my thoughts after that statement.
Back to you, Caleb.
So action potential, when we talk about myelination, we talk about saltatory conduction. Essentially what you have is myelination is insulating the membrane, so you're not losing that charge or using more energy to maintain that flow of the
So we're
charge.
insulating the whole membrane.
Well, it's more like in sections. It's nodes. So
very good.
you have these things called the nodes of Ranvier,
Ranvier.
however you want to pronounce it. Like, there's a million pronunciations, but essentially myelin is forming these humps on the actual axon, and then in between each hump there's a space that is left, and that's where you're going to have your sodium, potassium, ATPase pumps, and that's where you're going to use the energy to keep all that going. So there's less energy expenditure over the entire axon.
Very good.
It's insulating it so that charge is able to just jump between I got to go the opposite way. Jump between each node.
Nodes of Ranvier.
Yeah.
That's right, Ranvier.
And then, you get into if it's myelinated, it's going to be faster and use less energy. And if it's unmyelinated, it's going to be slower and use more energy. And then you get into all the things of the size, the resistance, the capacitance, how that affects the movement
Very
of
good.
the action potential.
Right, very good, very good. Okay, well done. Golf clap. Okay. Any other topics that we need to talk about?
That should be everything.
I think you covered most of what we were supposed to cover this week. Okay. All right. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of our podcast, which is called
Ion physiology.
Ion Physiology. So keep your eye on physiology. And let us know if you have any questions, comments, or snide remarks. I'm going to end this how I always end it. Stay cool, stay in school, don't do drugs, and we will see you next time.